Hello and welcome. My name is Hilda, and I'm a librarian here at the Los Angeles Public Library. Today we have David Zhao from Public Counsel here to talk to us about medical debt and what you can do if you have medical debt. This presentation is being recorded, so if you miss any part of it, you can check it out on the recording at the YouTube channel for the library. There will be a Q&A at the end, so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and they will be answered at the end. And now I'll hand it over to David. Take it away, David.
Thanks, Hilda. As Hilda mentioned, my name is David Zhao. I'm a lawyer here at Public Counsel in Los Angeles, and today we'll be talking about understanding your rights around medical debt. So just as a brief introduction, who we are at Public Counsel, we're a nonprofit pro bono legal services organization. We provide free legal assistance to low-income consumers in LA County. And in particular, the group that I work with, which is called the Consumer Rights and Economic Justice Project, we handle a bunch of consumer matters. So anything involving predatory lending, debt collection, real estate fraud, foreclosure, student loans, criminal system debt, consumer fraud, and unfair business practices. And of course, this also includes medical debt. At the end of the presentation, I'll provide some resources if you'd like to reach out to us if you have any legal issues as well. And just as a brief reminder, this presentation is educational. So although I'm a lawyer and we are a legal services organization, this is not legal advice. But if you would like legal advice from us, you can reach out to us independently. So just to begin this presentation, let's start with just defining what is medical debt. Medical debt is basically any money you might owe for any medical services from hospitals, care providers like doctors or dentists, or financial services companies. So for example, this might look like a hospital bill. It might look like a doctor or dentist bill. It might look like a CareCredit card or loan. And these are medical credit cards that are specially used for medical services. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. It might also just look like regular payments you're making on a regular credit card for things at the pharmacy, at CVS for medicine, or to pay your deductible when you go see your dentist or doctor. All of these things are types of medical debt. You owe money for something that has a medical purpose. The tricky thing to know, and one thing that people really care about and is important, is whether or not medical debt can hurt your credit score. So in general, in California, most medical debt won't show up on your credit report. So this means that if you have hospital bills or doctor and dentist bills, and even if you haven't paid them off yet, they are not going to lower your credit score. In fact, if you get a credit report, they're not going to show up at all, or they shouldn't. However, the thing to know is that medical credit cards and regular credit cards are a little bit different. And if they're used for medical bills, even then they'll still affect your credit. So you're going to see on the top half of the slide here are the types of medical debt that will not appear on your credit report: hospital bills and doctor and dentist bills. But anything that you put on a medical credit card or your regular credit card, even if it's for a medical purpose, those types of credit will show up on your credit report and could potentially lower your credit score. So something to just be aware of when and if you have to take on medical debt. Generally, direct types of debt directly with the hospital or the doctor are preferable if you're worried about your credit score. So today we're going to be talking about two types of medical debt and how to deal with it. The first is going to be getting help with your hospital bills, and we'll be discussing financial assistance and charity care programs, as well as dealing with any hospital bills you might have in collections. The second part of the presentation will be discussing those care credit cards I mentioned earlier, and just your patient rights around, if you get signed up for a care credit card, or if you think your, dentist or doctor is trying to sign you up for one, and just understanding what your rights are. So first, let's talk about dealing with hospital bills. And the most important thing to know when you're dealing with hospital bills is this thing called financial assistance. Here in California, under the Fair Hospital Pricing Act, all hospitals must offer financial help to patients who qualify. This can mean either free care, so the entire hospital bill is going to be reduced to zero, or discounted medical care. And this is really, truly all hospitals. So not just your nonprofit hospitals, but also your private hospitals as well. So again, free care means a 100% bill reduction. And discounted care means a reduction in your bill. So let's say you get 60% off, 50% off, and then the rest that you do have to pay, you're going to get put on a payment plan for the rest that is going to be 0 interest and capped at 10% of your monthly income after basic living costs. And this is required by the California Fair Hospital Pricing Act. So then naturally the next question is, well, do you qualify for financial assistance? There's a little bit of a formula here. So, under certain conditions, a hospital must provide you financial assistance, so either the free or discounted care. And the conditions are as follows. Firstly, you must be at or below 400% of the federal poverty level. So in 2025, for a family of 4, this means your annual income is around $128,600 or less. Or for an individual, it means $62,600 a year or less. In addition to that, you must be uninsured. So if you are at or below 400% of the federal poverty level and you are uninsured, then the hospital is required to provide you free or discounted care. They cannot make you pay the full amount. Well, then the next question is, well, what if you do have insurance, even if it's, Medi-Cal or private insurance? Well, financial assistance is still available, but the formula is a little bit different. So even if you are insured, hospitals must still provide you financial assistance if you are, again, at or below 400% of the federal poverty level, so same as the last slide. And then in addition, if you're insured and your out-of-pocket medical costs, so the amount that you pay yourself after insurance, are more than 10% of your family's income. So basically, if you're insured, but it's really still not helping you, and it's still taking a lot of your financial resources and your family's financial resources to pay for these medical bills, and you're at or below 400% of the federal poverty level, then again, the hospital must provide you financial assistance. It's not optional. The hospital has to provide you free or discounted care. So again, even if you're insured or uninsured, there may be ways to get financial assistance. Well, the next question is, David, you discussed getting free care or discounted care. How do you know if you're going to get the free or the discounted care? What splits the difference between the two? Basically, it's just going to depend by hospital. Each hospital will have its own income rules. Again, if you're eligible, you meet those formulas we just discussed, you must receive some kind of help. So it has to either be at least discounted, if not free. But then each hospital will kind of have a separate policy to distinguish between, or to tell between, who counts for the free and then who counts for the discounted. And so you're going to have to check your hospital's website or call their billing office to see their individual policy and what help you will receive. So this is an example here of one hospital where they provide full charity care for people who meet a certain set of requirements. And then if you're a little bit above those requirements, you're going to get partial charity care, which is going to be that discounted care. Well, the next question you might have is, okay, well, medical bills are still a lot. I do technically make more than 400% of the federal poverty level. Like maybe you're at 401%, you're right above it. And that's a lot of folks. Can I still get financial assistance? The answer is yes, you may still qualify. Some hospitals' rules are going to be more generous than what the law requires. So many hospitals will still give you financial assistance, even if you're at 401%, 500%, 600%, although they are not required to. And what you're going to want to do is to check your hospital's website or call their billing office to see, what help is available. So here's another example. I think this is Cedars-Sinai here in Los Angeles. And you can see they provide financial assistance. You'll also see it called charity care by a lot of hospitals. They'll provide this charity care or financial assistance for folks even up to 600% of the federal poverty level. So even if you think you might be making a little bit more, it's always a good idea to check with your hospital to see if they have more generous policies. Well, how do you get financial assistance? Like, what steps do you have to take? Is it automatic? No, unfortunately not in California. You're going to have to do it yourself, and you're going to do that by visiting your hospital's website or calling their billing office to request a financial assistance application form, and they must provide it in your language. You're going to want to complete the form, and then you're going to mail it to the hospital's billing or business office. And generally, they're going to ask for you to attach your recent pay stubs or income tax returns, and they'll say which ones are required. They just want some proof of your financial situation. The LA County Department of Public Health also suggests using $4, which is a nonprofit that helps folks apply online for financial assistance or charity care for free. And you can check them out at $4.org. But you can also, of course, do it yourself. Again, the hospital will not automatically check if you apply or are eligible. You're going to have to apply on your own. And that's, I think, where a lot of folks, end up with the medical bill, even if they technically, under the law, might be able to get rid of all of it or part of it. Okay, so what if questions around charity care? The first is, what if your hospital bill is from a long time ago? Not a problem. Under the law in California, there are no time limits for financial assistance or charity care. So even if your hospital bill is from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, just last year, it doesn't matter. You can apply for financial assistance for any of those outstanding medical hospital bills. What if you've already made some payments, like you've already paid, half of it off? Well, actually, if you do apply for financial assistance and it turns out you should have gotten all of it discounted or reduced to zero, the hospital must refund you whatever extra that you have paid so far. So for example, if you had a hospital bill and you paid half of it, but then you apply for financial assistance and it turns out the hospital should have given you total free care, like you should have paid $0, then the hospital must refund you that half that you've already paid, which is awesome. And what if you're undocumented or not a resident of the area where you went to the hospital? This does not matter. You do not have to provide your immigration status or residency when you apply for charity care or financial assistance. Even if the hospital includes it on their form, which they shouldn't be, if you leave it empty, they cannot deny you the charity care or financial assistance. So you don't have to provide it. Okay, so that's financial assistance and charity care. Some folks also, though, sometimes have to deal with hospital bills that are sent to collections, which means that the hospital has now sent it to another company, or they have an internal team that basically is like calling you or sending you mail saying, hey, you need to pay, you need to pay. What are the rules around that? Well, under the California Fair Hospital Pricing Act, there's a couple rules here, which is that hospitals cannot be sending your bill to collections until a couple of things happen. The first is you need to have been given a notice with details about your bill. So like, what services did you get? How much were each of the services itemized? And they have to have given you an application for financial assistance. So they have to have sent you that charity care form for you to fill out. In addition, you have to actually have been denied the financial assistance before they can send you to collections. So the hospital basically has to have determined that you are not eligible, and then they can send your bill, to collections. Or, maybe they did send you that application, but you didn't respond within 180 days. Then that opens the door for them to send you to collections as well, because they basically tried and you just didn't respond. So again, if your hospital is sending you collections bills, but you don't think that this process was followed, it is worth disputing. You can always come to us here at Public Counsel, reach out to your hospital and say, hey, I don't have a notice with the bill. I didn't get an application for financial assistance, so I don't think you can be sending me to collections. Lastly, hospitals cannot at all send your bill to collections if you are still negotiating your payment. So even if you haven't applied for financial assistance, but you called them and said, hey, I think the amount is too high, I don't remember getting that service, or you have any disputes on the amount, that counts as negotiating your payments. Or if you've reached out and said, hey, could I, get a discount, or can I enter a payment plan? Any conversation like that you've had with the hospital basically closes the door on them sending your bill to collections. Okay, lastly, and this is sometimes what we see here at Public Counsel because we're providing legal assistance to folks, is can you be sued for your hospital bill? So not just being sent to collections, but literally taken to court. And there's some rules around this as well. So the first is that you cannot be sued by a hospital until 180 days after your first bill. So generally half a year after your first bill, you can't be taken to court. So, something you don't really need to be worried about right away after a bill. Don't worry about lawsuit stuff right away. And lastly, the most important thing to know is that even if you are sued, maybe after the 180 days, and even if you lose the lawsuit, hospitals cannot take your wages or property or force a sale of your property to repay hospital bills. So, even if a court decides you do owe that amount of money, it doesn't mean they're going to start taking a cut of your paycheck or force you to sell your home. So just know that those things are going to be protected. So what do you do if you think any of the stuff that we've talked about today hasn't gone according to the law, if you think your rights have been violated? What you should try to do is file a complaint against the hospital with the Department of Healthcare Access and Information. You can do it online at their website here, or you can do it by mail. And what this department does, it's a state department, is they'll investigate your complaint, and they may fine the hospital, or if they determine that the hospital should have given you financial assistance or charity care, they may require the hospital to reimburse you with interest if you paid more than you should have. And again, if you would like assistance filing these complaints, you can always come to us here at Public Counsel. We may be able to assist you if we have capacity. Okay. So I know that was a lot about hospital stuff, but we're not done yet. There's another type of medical debt that is growing here in California, and this is called a CareCredit card. You'll also sometimes hear them called medical credit cards, but CareCredit is the biggest company that we've seen folks deal with here, especially in Los Angeles. Well, what is CareCredit? So CareCredit is a credit card run by Synchrony Bank. It's this big national bank. And it's something that dentists and doctors offer to patients to pay for medical or dental bills. So the thing with these credit cards to know is that their rates are often much higher than regular credit cards, 32% sometimes versus like a 22% interest rate. And like we discussed earlier, because it is a credit card, it will affect your credit score. So unlike those hospital bills we were just discussing, like even if you aren't able to pay or you forget or you're not getting financial assistance, it's still not going to lower your credit score. But the thing with these credit cards, these CareCredit cards or medical credit cards, is if you don't pay, it is going to lower your credit score and it will show up on a credit report. And that can be harmful because, unfortunately, your credit score may be something that like a landlord uses to determine whether you're going to be able to get a rental application approved, or if you want to take out some loans for school or for anything else. Unfortunately, these types of cards can impact your prospects with that. So something to be aware of when you see these cards out there. So again, one thing we say, we're not saying don't take out these cards or avoid them entirely, but just before you sign up for a CareCredit card at your dentist or doctor's office, if they offer it to you, really think about if you will struggle to pay these higher interest rates, or if you might miss payments and how that might harm your credit score. So some of the problems with CareCredit that we've seen are that oftentimes patients are signed up for a CareCredit card without even knowing it. So, sometimes a patient is told that this is a payment plan, not a credit card. And so they think they're entering a payment plan with a dentist, but it's actually you're entering a loan contract with the Synchrony Bank. So it's not always disclosed what's going on. Or sometimes the patient is told it's a loan eligibility check. So you just want to check if you would be eligible for a payment plan or a credit card. But then what they end up signing and thinking they're filling out is just like a eligibility check is actually the loan application or the credit card application. So they walk away thinking, oh, if I wanted to, I could be approved. But actually they walk away from the office and have fully been signed up for a credit card. So some problems that we've been seeing with how these cards are opened. The next thing is a little complicated, but just so you're aware, many times these CareCredit cards will have what are called deferred interest plans. You may also see them be called promotional periods, and they basically let you delay paying interest for a year. However, if you don't pay everything by the end of the year, CareCredit will charge full interest on the entire initial amount. So for example, if you were signed up for a CareCredit card and you were charged $1,000 and you're paying it down, but by the end of the year you've only paid $900, or even $999. So you basically paid off the whole card, but just there's a little tiny bit left. the first day of the next year, they will charge 32% on that original $1,000, not just the amount that you have left over. And so you'll just get this huge charge of like $300, $320, $302 or something, or $320 on the account. And now you have to pay that down, and that's going to start accruing interest too. So these deferred interest plans, oftentimes they're called like zero interest payment plans because technically for the first year there's zero interest, but in reality, the interest is just waiting for you at the end of the year. It's important to know that technically nowadays it is illegal for medical providers to sign you up for cards with deferred interest plans. However, we still see it happening to people, regardless. And so if you are ever, offered one of these cards, really try to, ask questions or read the fine print and see if it's one of these deferred interest plans, because, it can trap you into a cycle of debt that is really hard to get out of. Not to mention it is technically illegal, and we'll discuss that in a second. And lastly, if you are not able to pay off your CareCredit card, Synchrony Bank may sue you, or they may sell your card to a debt collector. So like another company or a debt buying company, and that company may sue you. So we've sometimes seen some clients who didn't even know they got signed up for this card. So obviously they didn't pay it either. And then, like half a year later or a year later, they get sued by this random other company they've never heard of. And it turns out that company, now has their credit card from CareCredit and is suing them for all the money back and the interest. So Synchrony Bank is pretty lawsuit friendly. They are not afraid to sue you. And so, we help folks deal with those types of lawsuits. And obviously you don't want to get to that point. So something to be aware of when you're dealing with this card. Okay, so a couple red flags to watch out for. I kind of discussed them in the problems we were just saying, but some real clear things to just, if you notice it, just definitely flag it in your head. The first is if your dentist, and these are very common at dentist offices. This is where we've seen many of these cases come from. Is your dentist offers you a zero interest payment plan. So that is sometimes going to be that deferred interest plan we just discussed, where it's really not zero because it's just going to kick in the next year. Another thing to look out for is if you're given an iPad to sign during or after your appointment. So a lot of times these forms, these credit card forms, are going to be on an iPad because it's just really convenient. And the staff, a dental assistant may come and give it to you, while you're getting your teeth cleaned, or right after you get your teeth cleaned. And they'll just scroll through all the pages and then just get to the one where you need to sign and just point at it and say, well, sign here. And so it's a lot easier to kind of get those agreements to move quickly if it's digital. So something to be worried about. Of course, it's very normal to have forms to sign before your appointment. That's, common procedure. But if they're giving you stuff to sign after you've gotten your services or during the services, something to look out for. Just really double check, what are they trying to get me to sign here? And especially if the staff is rushing you to sign the forms. So this is a tactic we've seen before, which is the dental assistant or administrators or other staff are telling you, you've got to sign it quickly, or they're just handing it to you and it's already highlighted where you need to sign, and they're not letting you read the rest of the form. This is something to just, look out for. Not always going to be CareCredit, but generally just something to notice. Okay. So you have a lot of patient rights here in California around these cards. And there's a law here, California Business and Professions Code 654.3, that regulates how these cards can be given out. And so it's really important for you to know the law and to know if the law is being violated when you're being signed up for one of these cards. So the first is that you cannot be signed up for these cards by your dentist while you are asleep. This sounds obvious, but it was something that was happening, and so that's why there's a law around it. A provider cannot sign you up for CareCredit or any other medical credit card or loan while you are under anesthesia or sedated. If that happens, it's quite problematic. The second is you must receive a treatment plan first. So a provider cannot sign you up for CareCredit without first providing you a written notice and treatment plan with the cost after insurance. So you have to be provided some document that's we're giving you your itemized bill. Here's how much it costs even after your Denti-Cal or Medi-Cal or whatever insurance you have. And there's like specific notice that they have to provide around, this is going to be a credit card. And we've, given you your treatment plan already. So this all needs to be provided in writing. Everything must be provided in your language. So any of those notices, those treatment plans, as well as the actual credit card application or agreement, has to be in the language that you are speaking, with your dentist or provider. So if they're providing you services in Spanish, they cannot be giving you forms in English. Additionally, if you're on Medi-Cal or Denti-Cal, there's an additional set of protections for you, which is that the provider must secure covered services first. So they have to check if there's any insured stuff that they can do for you instead of the stuff that they're going to charge to the CareCredit card. They have to offer you any alternate covered treatments, so some alternate thing that could kind of get the same job done. And they must notify you that you have the right to ask for services only covered by your insurance. So they have to tell you like, hey, listen, you could get this CareCredit card for, this tooth procedure that's not covered by Denti-Cal, but you can totally say no. And a lot of times I think folks feel really pressured because their dentist may say like, oh, well, if you don't get this service done, then, then, your teeth are going to fall out, or you're going to have to get invasive, gum grafting surgery, things like that. But they need to also say, or they at least need to say like, but you can still say no. And that's not always something that we hear folks are saying to their patients. Some more protections here. So no surprise charges. So you cannot be charged for treatments more than 30 days in advance on one of these credit cards. So they can't be opening up a credit card and saying like, oh, well, you're going to come in a year from now and then get your teeth cleaned. So let's charge that to the card. There's a slight exception for orthodontia, so braces stuff. They can do because that is stuff you do have to plan out in advance. But otherwise, they can't be billing you for stuff that hasn't happened. And again, they can't be signing you up for cards with that deferred interest promotional period scheme. And so just watch out for that. And what that means is they can just only be signing you up for CareCredit cards with like a regular interest rate plan that just would start accruing, like start charging the interest right away instead of waiting a year. Okay, this one is one that happens unfortunately unfortunately not infrequently. It does happen, which is you shouldn't be getting help on the loan applications. So if there's a CareCredit document that they're having you filling out, they cannot, and their staff cannot fill out any part of that application for you. So your name, your address, social security number, income, any part of the form that's like a line where you would have to write in something that you would know, they cannot be filling that out for you. So sometimes we see folks who are handed a clipboard and all of their information has already been filled out and they're just told, okay, just sign here. That is not allowed. The other thing is that these forms cannot be filled out in the exam or treatment area. This is something that happens too, which is folks are being handed these CareCredit card applications, while they're sitting in the dentist chair, like they just got their teeth cleaned, or they're literally getting their teeth cleaned as they're being handed these forms to fill out. Or in the treatment area at all. Forms that are signed there for CareCredit cards are against this law. They shouldn't be happening. You should really only be given these forms out in the waiting room or like the front of the office. And lastly, you must receive all your loan details. So before you sign anything and anything's charged to the card, the provider must give you all the important loan details. And these are called Truth in Lending Act disclosures. So these are the types of things you get when you sign up for a credit card, which is, or when you start getting bills for your credit card, which is like, what's your interest rate? Are there any late fees? Things like that. Basically all the, nitty gritty details around the card and what you're going to have to pay. And after you sign and get the card, you should receive updates about your loan regularly. So you should be receiving billing statements pretty much right away, periodically with how much you owe, what your interest rate is, again, the late fees. And sometimes folks don't get these until months after they have been signed up for the card. So they didn't even know. And again, that's also against the law. Okay. So similar to the hospital financial assistance slides, there's some things you can do if you think your rights have been violated. So the first thing you can do is you can dispute all the charges on your card directly with Synchrony Bank as fraud. And here's the phone number to call. And tell them which of your rights have been violated. So say here in California, I was signed up for this card and told it was a zero interest payment plan. I was not told it was a credit card. I was not told it was a deferred interest plan. I had no idea. And so I think this card was opened fraudulently. Or I was, this card was a result of me, sitting in the dentist chair. I was given forms to sign, but I wasn't given any time to read them. Everything was filled out already for me. They put in my social security number, my address. And so I think this was opened fraudulently. Synchrony Bank will not it's really a way to document that you have disputed the card with the bank. They're not always going to agree with you. It can sometimes become a he said, she said situation where they say, well, the dentist, gave you the form and we have a copy of the form and your signatures on it. But it is really important to show that you have reached out to the bank to dispute it yourself. Sometimes Synchrony Bank will freeze the card while they investigate further. So it may be a way to sort of pause the interest accrual as well. But more importantly, what you want to do after that is you want to submit a complaint online or by mail to the government. And there are a couple agencies that you can reach out to, and they may reach out to Synchrony or your dentist or medical provider to respond to your complaint and potentially could help remove the charges. So there's a lot of different government agencies to go through. I'll just describe them briefly. But again, of course, if this is something you would like assistance with, you can come to us here at Public Counsel and we'll see what we can do to help you. The first is if you want to submit complaints against the credit card company, so CareCredit or Synchrony Bank, you can submit complaints to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You can also submit a consumer complaint to the State of California Department of Justice. So that's the Attorney General's office. If you'd like to submit your complaints against the provider or dentist, then you can also submit those complaints to the California Department of Justice, the Office of the Attorney General. You could also submit a complaint to the California Dental Board, so the folks that license and regulate the dentists. And so we recommend, submitting complaints to all of the above if you have the time. But again, it can be a lot of effort. If you have language capacity issues or you need help with translating, then of course you can reach out to us here at Public Counsel. Okay, so I know that was a lot. So some high-level things to do and not do, just so you remember if you take away anything from this presentation. The first is don't put medical expenses on a credit card right away. Don't just reach into your wallet and pull out the credit card if you're at the hospital or the pharmacy or anything like that. Well, pharmacy you probably will have to pay with the card, but if you're at the dentist's office or doctor's office, try to see if you can get financial assistance if it's a hospital, or if you can get on a payment plan directly with the provider. So some dentists, it's not as common anymore, but some dentists or medical providers still are able to just keep the bill with themselves and not have it be through a credit card. And so it's always worth checking because that type of bill is not going to show up on your credit report, even if you're having trouble paying it. The second thing is don't sign any forms that you do not understand or that the staff fill out for you or that are given to you while you're in the medical examination room or dentist's chair. You do not have to fill out those forms. Ask questions, have them explain it to you, or wait until you're out in the waiting room and things are calmer and you have more time and aren't in a rush to really read through what's going on. Because once you sign it, then they're going to say, oh, well, you signed it. Even though, that isn't really always true because there's other problems that might have gone on with how that was signed. But you want to just, not sign anything that you don't really know what's going on for. And lastly, if there is a lawsuit, don't wait to respond if you get sued on a medical debt. So we talked earlier about being sent to court for these types of things or Synchrony suing you potentially. If that happens, which hopefully it won't, but if that happens, you do want to respond within 30 days. So you want to reach out to a lawyer, to us here at Public Counsel or another legal aid organization here in Los Angeles and get help because you have a 30-day deadline to respond. Okay, but some things you can do. So the first thing is for any hospital bills, do request financial assistance forms. They've got to provide them to you. They should have in the first place, but if you request it, they must provide it as well. Do dispute your hospital bill if it is in collections and you did not receive financial assistance form. So if you start getting hospital bills in collections, they're calling you, they're mailing you, but you never got any financial assistance forms, even if you don't think you're eligible, they should have still provided it before they sent you to collections. So, let them know. Always make sure to read any forms given you to sign, kind of like I was saying earlier, and ask questions if you're confused. And lastly, do submit a complaint if you think any of your rights have been violated. So anything we discussed today, if you feel like that didn't happen for you, go ahead and submit a complaint or reach out to us and see if we can help you submit a complaint on your behalf. Okay, that's the end of the presentation. I will go ahead and take some questions. And just as a reminder, we cannot provide specific legal advice for your situation in today's workshop. Of course, you have general questions on the information, I can answer those. And if we're unable to answer the question or it's too specific, then please make an appointment with us to discuss your specific legal questions.
All right. Hi, I'm back for the questions. I don't see any questions at the moment from the audience, but we do have frequently asked questions that we have ready. And this first one I feel like is really important. I know that you mentioned it in one of the slides and touched on it. Can I still get financial assistance from a hospital even if I am undocumented?
Yes. Yeah, we discussed it briefly in the slide, but it is something that comes up a lot as folks are just worried about even applying. The answer is yes, you can get financial assistance. There is no citizenship or residency requirement. And in fact, hospitals should not be asking for that in the first place. If you see any hospitals asking for that, reach out to us as well because they shouldn't be doing that.
That's really good to know. And second frequently asked question. Can I still get financial assistance from a hospital even if I got treatment a long time ago?
Also, yes. Even if you think that you are outside like what is reasonable, there is no time limit in the law. So there's no unreasonable amount of time that can pass before you ask for financial assistance. People are applying for financial assistance for bills from 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Wow.
And so there's no like statute of limitations for these types of things, the way the law is written. So I would always recommend it. If there's any bill that you have, no matter how from how long ago, no matter how much you've paid down, even if there's any amount left, apply for financial assistance.
Oh, that's great. That's great information, knowing that you can go as far back as like a decade or more.
Mm-hmm.
The last question is, why do dentists use these CareCredit cards if they're so harmful to patients?
Yeah, it's interesting because there are some benefits to the cards, because for some folks who it's not covered by their insurance, it is a way to get it is a way for you to finance some sort of medical care or dental care if it's not covered by insurance. Because if you can't pay out of pocket, then but you still might need it, then it is an option. And so for many people, they are able to pay down the card, and so it is an option. But for some dentists, it's also just easier to use these cards to help people to pay instead of having to build out their own like billing system internally with the dentist's office. So instead they can just say, well, if you want to deal with the billing, then you can just call Synchrony Bank. And so they don't have to hire people to do all that in their office as well. So it's, benefits for dentists as well. But of course, unfortunately, sometimes not everyone's aware of the harms to the patients.
Right. I see. A little bit of convenience there. And those are all the questions that we have. And thank you so much, David, for that really informative presentation. Very loaded with information. And I especially love the do's and don'ts. I feel like those were really helpful. So for anybody watching, if you missed it, then you can always watch the recording and you can pause there, look at the do's and don'ts, look at the entire presentation at our YouTube page. So there it is. If you're watching here live, then you come back here, but this is the link on the screen. So yes, thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, David, for this presentation, and hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Hilda.